Hello, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Collar here, and joining me to talk a little Marcus Davenport and to explain the entire salary cap to us, Katherine Terrell, who covers the New Orleans Saints for many outlets over your time there. Presently, ESPN. Katherine, how are you? Great to be with you.
I'm doing great. I just got my first coffee of the morning, so I'll be even better in a few minutes. My house ran out of coffee yesterday, which is always disaster week in my house. So doing much better now.
Well, it's not good for you because this is your season. I have jokingly called you on Twitter Capthrin Terrell because nobody has to understand the CBA and the salary cap more than a New Orleans Saints reporter. I have to say, every year, your article about how they're going to make enough cap space is truly incredible. And also, I have realized too that if anyone ever implies, even slightly, that the cap exists, New Orleans Saints fans, it's like they smell blood in the water and they just attack. It doesn't even matter if you're talking about them. You could just say, I think the another team has some cap issues. They're like, no, cap issues are not possible. Like, what is the deal with that?
It actually is hilarious. It's like Regina George at the end of Mean Girls, like when she's standing there just watching the chaos happen. I don't know if I'm Regina, like because every time I see this happen, and it's happened a lot over the years, I just kind of sit back and watch. I think it's because this has literally been going on for 10 years. I'm not kidding. If you go search Cap Hell and Saints, you will come up with articles from 2013, all the way back to when Drew Brees signs an extension that back then was huge and today would look like peanuts. And it's crazy. And the Saints just keep doing the same thing year after year, and they're going to be doing it for the next 5 years, probably because that's how long it's going to take to get out from under Derek Carr's contract. And it's not even a bad contract, honestly, when you look at it. It's just they have they have to make negative $100 million into positive $100 million or whatever every year. I should really take tips from them. Like, how do I do this with my own money? I need to learn these ways.
Right. Just continue to tell people that you'll pay them later, pay off all of your
Oh,
bills later.
credit
The credit
card.
card. Yeah, that's right. Actually, this
Yeah.
is the credit card. Yeah, let's just for a second because we're very much in the same boat here. And the Vikings just today, it was the Star Tribune reported that their two signings, Byron Murphy and Josh Oliver, added void years, which of course makes my brain explode because you do have to pay the void years. But maybe we could talk just for a second about how this is all possible because I think that there is kind of a lack of understanding. And I will be honest, I get very confused sometimes by the salary cap stuff of how a team can so consistently have cap trouble and then work their way out of it. But also, it does end up having ramifications for them.
Yeah, the void years thing happened 5 or 6 years back. So I've covered the Saints off and on in some capacity since 2012, with the exception of the 3 years I covered the Bengals. So in one of those years when I was covering the Bengals, 2016 or 2017, the Saints tried to sign Nick Farley and they had no cap space, and that I believe the Saints were the first one to do it. I could be wrong. That was when they came up with void years, which basically adds. Sorry, a fly just right in front of me. It basically it adds an extra year to the contract, but the only purpose is so that you can give a player a giant signing bonus and then spread it out for accounting purposes. So you can only spread signing bonus out for 5 years. So literally every year of a player's contract, you could add a fake year and convert base salary to signing bonus, which is the Saints' favorite thing to do, and then add another fake year and then spread it out even more. So the Saints have been doing this for a long time now. As I said, since probably Nick Farley, who didn't really end up playing for the Saints that long, actually. It's kind of a crazy story how that turned out. I think he had a heart issue and had to retire from the NFL. Um, but there's a downside, and that is if you do all these void years and the player leaves in free agency, his contract automatically voids, and then you're paying all this money, all the remaining signing bonus to a player that is not on your team. It is like cutting a player before his contract is up, which is what happened with Marcus Davenport, what happened with David Onyemata. The Saints are paying $10 million to David Onyemata this year. He's not on the team. Now, of course, he got that money a long time ago, but that is multiple players that they can no longer sign. So it's, that's the downside of it. But if you're a team that thinks, hey, we're good and we can win this year, then who cares about our future selves? Like, we'll just worry about this year.
Yeah, Andrew Brandt said if you only think 6 months ahead ever, then doing stuff like this is really good and the cap doesn't exist. But if you have any outlook beyond 6 months, which apparently the New Orleans Saints don't, and just keep hurting themselves more and more as we go along, all of it made sense for Breeze, but it made a lot less sense after Breeze. It also seems like this is in the Vikings case and in the Saints case, a very ownership type of driven thing. Like, yes, we will cut that check right now, because a lot of times that's how it has to work. Like, we'll give you the signing bonus today. Yeah, it'll be hitting the cap later, but we've got the cash on hand to be able to give it to you, where not all ownerships really want to manage it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of owners that are not willing to cut an enormous check over and over again. At Cincinnati, honestly, is one of those teams. It's not how they operate. They're a team that likes to not guarantee a ton of money and basically go year by year. But their pitch to free agents is that, hey, you're almost guaranteed to see out your whole contract if you come sign here, even if you don't have the guaranteed money. And that's changed a little bit. The Bengals even started doing, I believe they did a void year on Trey Hendrickson. And granted, that was post COVID, but I still was so shocked to see it. So they've even changed. A lot of teams have started doing this void years trend. No team does it as much as the Saints, but yeah, a lot of teams that think, hey, we have a window to win, we're going to go for it. And the Saints have long believed that window is never closed. And that's the funny part. Like, we're talking about, it's been going back to Drew Brees. I remember I was covering Drew Brees in 2014. I don't remember how old he was then, probably mid 30s. And we had the whole talk about the window and whether the window was closed. And he said the window wasn't closed. And so now, fast forward 8 years later, and the Saints still think the window is open. And, maybe they're right. We won't know until we see it all play out in the fall. But that's why they went after Derek Carr instead of saying, hey, we're just going to take the salary cap lump now. And the downside of that is it's a 5-year deal. You could get out of it in 3 years, but they're going to have to be converting these giant numbers for years. And we'll just, like I said, we'll be talking about it for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see part of their thought process when you look at the rest of the NFC South and you go like, well,
Yeah, I
Tom
get it.
Brady's gone, right? I mean, when are the Panthers
It makes
going to
sense.
be good? It's going to be at least 2 to 3 years if the Panthers hit on their quarterback before they're competitive. But at the same time, like, Derek Carr has this similar Kirk Cousins-y history of kind of being a middling quarterback. This is not really Drew Brees that you're bringing. It's almost like, do you realize how special what you had there was with Drew Brees? So I kind of get it though, because if you don't have an opportunity to sign or to draft a quarterback super high, then what is your other option if you're in a division and you have a lot of established players that you can win? So I totally get the Derek Carr thing. It's just hard to see that having any more of a ceiling than maybe just like making the playoffs.
Well, I mean, look back a few years ago when Kurt got all that guaranteed money, and I feel like people were really shocked at that. And you know, uh, contracts with huge guarantees are becoming more of the norm, but still very far away from giving out fully guaranteed contracts, with the exception of one person, obviously. So it shows that a team lives and dies with the quarterback, and you're gonna have to pay up in some form or fashion. You're either doing it in a free agency, or if you're any sort of good team, you're giving up a ton of first round picks and mortgaging your future to get up high enough to get a guy that could be good. Or the other way, I guess, is if you've just gotten so bad that you're already up at the top of the first round. But then how many teams are going from that bad to good enough to, like, going from that bad, getting their quarterback, and then having him play on a level that's good enough to get them to where they want to be before his rookie contract runs out. And the Bengals were able to do it, and obviously the Chiefs got Mahomes, although they didn't pick him top five. The Saints actually wanted him. That's kind of funny to think about alternate history if they had gotten him instead of Marshawn Lattimore. But yeah, I mean, quarterbacks are just gonna cost some sort of currency, I guess, and Just depends on how you want to go about it.
Yeah, it does feel like in more ways than just the cap, the Vikings and Saints kind of are Spider-Man meme at the moment with the way that exists with Kirk and Derek Carr. It's like, can you
We
guys
kind of
really
are.
win? Right? Can you really win? And you've hurt your cap enough to where you can't really stack your roster, and the guy's a little too expensive, and there's just this thing. But then opportunity has to be there to have the rookie quarterback contract, which is tricky. My biggest problem is the Saints haven't had a quarterback named Billy Joe in a really long time. I think
And they
that's
used to
the
have two.
I
They
know
used to
Billy Joe
have
Hobart, Billy
two.
Joe Tolliver.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that was before my time, unfortunately.
yeah, very disappointing. But when I was growing up and I collected football cards, I had both, and I was like,
I
what are
love
the
that.
odds? What are the odds? So let's talk
Two
about
Billy
Marcus.
Joes.
Two Billy Joes. Let's talk about Marcus Davenport though, because I think for the Vikings perspective, it makes a lot of sense to sign a guy to a short-term deal that might have some upside. However, that does ignore all the potential issues with Marcus Davenport, namely that a team that never lets anyone go unless they really want to let him go. So, why did the New Orleans Saints not want to keep Marcus Davenport?
Yeah, he's an example of the void year thing. He's costing them $7 million in dead money, and they are definitely in a bind because their best pass rusher is about to be 34 years old. Their guy that they picked to replace Cam Jordan was Marcus Davenport, and he's gone. And the other guy that was either going to replace Davenport or Jordan, Peyton Turner, hasn't really shown his potential yet. So with all that being said, you'd kind of think, wow, maybe they would try to make a play to keep Davenport because we don't really have pass rushers, and he's going to count against the cap anyway. I don't know if they offered him anything or what they offered. I do know that Dennis Allen had said that they would like to keep him, but teams always say that. They always love to keep you if they can keep you for cheap. No team really is really going to turn that down. I think the issue with Davenport, and I was trying to pull up his Vikings contract, is that he's just very inconsistent. Like you've seen his potential, you can see it in the stats. When he's good, he could be great. Unfortunately, we haven't really seen great a lot between the injuries and then this year, for some reason, he just kind of disappeared. I don't really know what that reason is. He really did kind of have a tough offseason. He had multiple shoulder surgeries at the beginning of the 2022 offseason. So he has all these shoulder surgeries. He's trying to get his shoulder right. I think the shoulder made him miss a lot of games. You get to the spring or summer or something like that, and he had surgery on his finger. So basically, he had most of his left pinky finger amputated because he had had a problem going all the way back to college. So obviously, if you're any sort of lineman on either side, basically all you're doing is, you know, messing with your fingers every single play. I mean, you look at an offensive lineman's hands that have been playing for a long time. They're always crooked and going every direction. It's crazy. So I think that's kind of what started to happen to Davenport at college. I think his pinky, like, I'm trying to remember the exact story. Something had happened to it and it just never got right. And I don't even think it could straighten out. And so he kept putting off trying to fix this for years and years. And I think it was painful and it wasn't working. And finally, after all these years, he just said, well, I'm just going to cut it off. He didn't just do this for fun, like Ronnie Lott, right? To keep playing. Um, he thought it would help. Um, that was Ronnie Lott, right? I'm not just making that up.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Okay. Um, he thought it would help, and theoretically it will, but I mean, his stats really weren't there this year. I think it could probably take an adjustment period to learn how to do that again with only 9 fingers. I mean, Jason Pierre-Paul did it, so it's not like okay, because he doesn't have 10 fingers, something seriously wrong. But also, I'm telling this rambling story because it paused his shoulder rehab. So basically, it put him all the way behind. He didn't get to participate in the beginning of training camp. I think there may have been conditioning issues with that. I mean, it all goes hand in hand. So if Davenport can come to this offseason, not have surgery, be healthy, be able to have a full offseason where he can just get his conditioning right, all of that, then I think he's perfectly capable of having a big season. And I think that's why the Vikings signed him. I think they see an extreme amount of potential in this guy that just so far has been inconsistent, but he has shown flashes of it.
I'm going to tell you the truth. When I asked you to come on, I didn't know amputated fingers were going to come up. I really didn't. I had not
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
the
I
story
didn't even.
about Davenport
I,
and his finger.
when I mentioned Ronnie Lott, then you like had a blank look. I was like, wait, he did cut the finger off, right? There's so much finger talking, and they were both pinky fingers. Yeah,
Yes,
fun
that did
stuff.
happen with Ronnie Lott. I was trying to think because you said like it was Ronnie Lott, and I was like, wait, I think, oh yeah, I think there was a
Right,
story,
I second
and
guess myself.
yeah, no, it was definitely him. And not only that, but the Vikings have some recent history in this. Their long snapper got his finger caught in someone's helmet and it ripped off the end of
Oh,
his finger. And yeah, and I think it was his agent sent the pictures of it to a couple of reporters because we were passing them around the media room one day and it was horrifying. So
oh my God.
it's still a scary, terrifying game. It isn't quite like guys eating glass back in the day, but it's still not for people like us. But 2021 Marcus Davenport really pops out on the numbers. Great pressure statistics, good sack totals, all those things. Like, is there a world where that is the Marcus Davenport the Vikings get, and they're happy with him and they love him and he's wonderful?
I definitely think so. I think one thing about Davenport is I recall at the beginning of the 2021 season, I feel like I was talking to Dennis Allen, who was a defensive coordinator at the time, not the head coach, and he said something like, well, the light bulb really came on for him this year, which, I mean, take that how you will with a player that was entering his fourth season. And I believe it was 2021. It could have been 2020, but, these things start to blur together after a while. But he said it kind of started to click for him because his first few years he did play a lot and he actually had decent numbers. Again, they were just inconsistent. So that 2021 season, I believe he did have the injury. I think it was the shoulder that limited him to 9 games. But he could get on the field and just you'd look at him and he would make these spectacular plays, um, and you realize, oh man, like sometimes I forget like how much talent he actually has. I feel like it was the 2021 season where he racked up a bunch of sacks in just a few games after he came back from injury. I'm doing this and looking at the stats. Yeah, there was a 3 game period in November where he had 4.5 sacks in 3 games. And then I think he got hurt right after that. So it was kind of sandwiched between, um, it was like sandwiched between periods of time he didn't play. So I think that guy is not lost. I mean, that was only 2 years ago. I think that guy is still there despite, having a truly down season, where he only had half a sack. So I don't know. I guess I'm trying to, you know, explain what happened, but also give hope that, it's not like you're signing a 35-year-old that it's the last ditch effort or anything like that. I think the talent is totally there if he has the right scenario to see it through.
This is a thing we struggle with all the time. Like fans like to call players injury prone. It's hard to say that
Yeah, and it's
because
tough.
who can predict their future though? Like because some guys have injuries and it's just bad luck and then they get it back together. But also the number of times in the last 5 minutes that you've said, well, he had this injury, this injury, this
It was a
injury.
lot of stuff.
That's pretty concerning, and that's why you end up with a 1 year contract. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask about New Orleans because it became in 2019 my favorite place to be because the playoff game there and everything else. Well, I guess technically that was early 2020. Is there a city that you've ever been to that has better food than New Orleans?
Oh, that's a really good question. Like United States or like anywhere?
Let's just go U.S.
US. Wow, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, if you go to New York, you have your option of, getting whatever you want. I don't know. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. I kind of feel like I have to rep for my city. Um, I have not been to Minnesota since 2007. So maybe one day I'll get to go there and see. But yeah, I've never covered a game there either, which is kind of seems crazy with how many good games these two teams have had between each other. But yeah, I feel like I have to stick with New Orleans. It's definitely the place where you have to like watch your diet the most, I think.
It is number one on my list without
I do
question.
love it.
And it was maybe like a day and a half, and I may have had like three meals, but I was like, I think these are the three greatest meals I may have ever had in my
Oh
life.
my gosh, it's
So
so good.
yeah, it's
I'm
the
trying,
best.
I'm like trying to like all I did. I went on vacation recently, and I we had Mardi Gras then vacation and St. Patrick's Day. So I'm trying to cook at home, not eat out at all, which is hard because all I did was eat out for a month. And you know how it is in season. You just eat out all the time, and it's just impossible to be healthy at all. So you have to do it in the off season. So this is me trying to not go out and eat New Orleans food. It's a struggle.
Yeah, I would say, well, in Minnesota too, it goes from either you can't like do anything outside because it's too cold, or you can't do anything outside because it's too hot. It goes from -10 to 100, and there's no like nice time to just jog and be outside and whatever else. It's just it's always a struggle. These are all excuses for us being out of shape, but that's okay. We don't have to cut off fingers and play defensive end or anything, so we're fine. We just have
I
to.
don't think that would save you much weight, honestly. If you cut off a finger, like I don't think that's going to help you. If you're a football player, it's probably not going to help you make weight.
No,
This
and I
conversation
don't
took a
think.
weird turn.
Yeah, it really did. I really had no idea about this finger thing, and it's entirely thrown off the whole conversation. But yeah, I
Wait,
would.
before I leave, the way you want to hear the way I found out?
Oh yes.
I had to go grab him in the locker room after I don't remember what it was. It may have been OTAs, it may have been minicamp. He's about to leave, and I wanted to ask him, I think, about the shoulder, and he has this bandage around his hand, and I was like, "Hey," I was like, "What happened to your hand?" He's like, "Oh, I cut my pinky off." I thought he was messing with me. I really didn't believe him. And he's like, "Yeah, no, no, really, I cut my pinky off." So he has like three reporters around him because you know how it goes in the locker room. People see you talking to a guy that hasn't talked in a while, and everyone just like does the shuffle over. Um, Pretty soon there's four of us talking to him, and he's explaining like the bandage on his hand and the whole gruesome thing about his finger and how he cut it off. And I think we all double checked. First of all, we asked him if we were allowed to put that out there, and he said yes. He understood we were going to report about the finger, but I think we all double checked with each other like four times to make sure that we had the correct terminology and why the finger got cut off because I've never experienced anything like this in my career. You see some weird football injuries, but that one, I think that was probably one of the bigger surprises I've ever had.
What you just described there is why if I ever have to miss a day of locker room, my brain just goes haywire. Like because anything can happen. You could show up to the locker room one day and a guy is lacking a pinky. Like you
It's
just
so
never
true.
know.
Or like the one day I missed locker room in 2013. The one day, and I'm serious when I say that, there was like this big to do with the reporter and the player was mad at the reporter, and all this stuff happened, and I had sat back from locker room to get work done, and I just couldn't believe that I missed the drama in the locker room that day. That'll teach you always show up for access. I'm sure fans listening to this are like, "What are you talking about?" Um, but yeah, it's this job is never boring. I'll tell you that.
No, no, no. You can never really try to step away from it, but that's totally fine with us. So, Catherine, you did a great job at explaining the salary cap and about Marcus Davenport's digits and just the overall context of Marcus Davenport, which I really appreciate. I'm glad we could get together. And you know what? I didn't set up on my system here to put the Prince photo up over your head, but
I wish you did. That's my favorite photo I've seen in all of free agency. I'm gonna send that to my friends for the rest of eternity.
I was glad that the entire nation of football reporters enjoyed that as much as we did here from Harrison Smith. So anyway, well, great to get together with you. Super fun. Hopefully, the Vikings play in New Orleans sometime soon, and I can go back, or you come up here and we will show
I would
you
love to.
the cheeseburger that we're known for, the Juicy Lucy. You've heard of it, right?
Well, we used to have a place down here called Juicy Lucy, and I loved it, and it closed down like 10 years ago. I really, truly cannot believe I've never covered a game there. It's one of like three stadiums I haven't been to, and it's such a bummer. I didn't get to go to the Metrodome. Haven't gotten to go to the new place. One day, one day I'll get to go there and go to Buffalo. And hey, like I said, Vikings and Saints seem to always have a lot of great games between them, and I enjoy covering it. Um, Hopefully, we'll have one soon.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't know when, schedule wise. I'm not one of those freaks that has memorized the division they're playing 3 years out. So we'll just have it happen. But let's not use it as an excuse to wait until then to get together. So we'll do it again, and really appreciate your time. And great to talk with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.